Hello fellow humans. A few days ago I participated in a debate at the University of Toronto about green growth versus degrowth. I was on the side defending degrowth. These concepts represent the clash between a system that can end civilization and a new system that is attempting to save civilization. These concepts have been battling in the field of ideas for quite some time now, some may even say for decades, and the debate never seems to end. It is only because the battle is not over we will continue to hear about green growth versus degrowth for a while. I'm going to share with you what I said at this debate and a bit more. I will try to be very clear that green growth is a dead end, a delusion and a lost cause. But what is green growth? What does degrowth have to say about all this? We begin with some definitions. The OECD defines green growth as fostering economic growth and development while ensuring that natural assets continue to provide the resources and environmental services on which our well-being relies. The World Bank defines green growth as economic growth that is efficient in its use of natural resources, clean in that it minimizes pollution and environmental impacts, and resilient in that it accounts for natural hazards and the role of environmental management and natural capital in preventing physical disasters. The United Nations Environment Programme uses the words green economy instead of green growth. The green economy is one that simultaneously grows income and improves human well-being while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. On the other hand, one of the degrowth definitions I am using is this. Degrowth is the expansion of freedoms and well-being for all humans within the limits of Earth, by reducing production and consumption to lighten ecological footprint, planned democratically in the spirit of social justice. Degrowth says that we as a society would need to re-establish balance between our lifestyles and the environment. We would need to phase out the obsession with economic growth and phase in new incentives to drive our economy. We have already breached several limits of what the planet can provide to sustain life. Degrowth means that on average we will need to decrease our production and consumption of stuff to come back under the planetary boundaries. Degrowth advocates for social justice, climate justice, more democracy, more freedoms, and genuine more well-being for all humans on Earth, not just affluent societies in the global North. Economic activity must enter into a positive feedback loop with the environment in which the satisfaction of human needs does not breach the limits of what nature can provide. When we take resources from nature, we must allow nature to regenerate that resource in order to continue the cycle of life. If the resource is not regenerable, we should consider not taking too much away from future generations. Now, specifically, in a degrowth society, we will all work much less in the productive economy, something like 15 or 20 hours per week. We will all have a universal basic income, a job guarantee, affordable housing, access to healthy food, access to universal basic services such as free public transit, and so on. Degrowth is a path towards a better life, a more just life for all humans on Earth. On the other hand, green growth, or its cousins eco-modernism or sustainable development, suggests that if we just innovated better, increased efficiencies, do even more capitalism, we will solve poverty, the climate crisis, and almost all our problems. Some of the technologies we often hear about are direct air capture, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, geoengineering, batteries based on lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, and even sodium. Fusion reactors that seem only 10 years away for the past 50 years. And more recently, thorium reactors. The problem with green growth is that it does not disconnect or decouple economic activity from adverse effects on the environment. This so-called decoupling must be absolute and must be fast enough in order for society to keep global heating under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Joachim Vogel and Jason Hickel have looked at 11 high-income countries that achieved absolute decoupling between 2013 and 2019. At these achieved rates of decoupling, these countries would take on average more than 220 years to reduce their emissions by 95%, emitting 27 times their remaining 1.5 degrees fair shares in the process. To meet their 1.5 degrees fair shares alongside continued economic growth, decoupling rates would need to increase on average by a factor of 10 by 2025, which is next year. Green growth has also failed to reduce poverty and inequality. We live in a new Gilded Age where the rich are getting richer, while the many still live paycheck to paycheck, including in high-income countries such as Canada, where I live. We have growth for a small bunch of happy humans on the planet, while billions are at poverty lines. Degrowth seeks to completely reframe how we measure our economic progress. Economic growth is understood as the growth of the gross domestic product, or in the case of corporations, as accumulation of capital. These metrics are very tightly linked to increasing environmental footprint. Research has shown that the growth of GDP cannot be disconnected from the growth of the environmental footprint in absolute terms and fast enough. Therefore, our economic system will need to measure differently how well the economy satisfies human needs. For example, the WISE project at Leiden University, funded by the European Commission, looks at no less than 63 indicators to be considered instead of the GDP. These are just some of them. I would argue that the planetary boundaries, as defined by the Stockholm Resilience Center, are the real measure of sustainability, not how well we measure capital accumulation. In essence, GDP measures economic agitation in monetary terms, the measure of how many goods and services are exchanged within the economy. However, GDP does not measure the so-called use value of things, the air quality of a forest, the joy of hiking, the quality of our health, taking care of our children and elders, making video essays on YouTube for free. But GDP growth, whether it is green or brown, is interested in the price of wood when you cut the forest, in the price of lithium when you extract it and turn it into batteries, the prices of fish, avocados, your labor, and so on. When Degrowth says we need to consider a different economic model, it means we need to look at what really matters for our well-being, from how we measure it, from how we construct meaning for our lives. Is it worth pursuing higher income and more capital accumulation for the sake of it, without consideration for its side effects? And what are the limits for the material expansion of our economy? We should phase out our obsession with growth at all costs. Some degrowth policies discuss putting caps on the extraction of materials. Other policies talk about regulating flows of capital to redistribute and pre-distribute wealth. Job creation will also be democratized via a national job guarantee, work time reduction, universal basic income, and universal basic services. Capitalism has already left behind 99% of humans. Surely we can do better than this. From the beginning of the Industrial Revolution at around 1750 to 1990, that's 240 years, humans have put into the Earth's atmosphere 785 billion tons of CO2. From 1990 to 2021, so that's 31 years, humans have emitted 948 billion tons of CO2. This is an unprecedented radical acceleration of emissions. According to the Stockholm Resilience Center, we as a civilization have breached 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. The planetary boundaries concept presents a set of 9 limits of Earth within which humanity can continue to develop and thrive for generations to come. The 6 breached boundaries are climate change, biosphere integrity, land system change, freshwater change, biochemical flows of phosphorus and nitrogen, novel entities such as microplastics, pesticides, and nuclear waste. Degrowth proposes a general massive reduction of production and consumption to bring society back within planetary boundaries. Degrowth policies have sufficiency at their core and use innovation in efficiency to provide sufficient well-being for all humans. Inequalities will be vastly reduced in terms of income, wealth, access to basic services, At the same time, the quality of life will increase towards satisfaction of needs that is largely not based on material consumption. Of course, we need to talk about rationing. How do we do it? How do we decide? How we apply and enforce? Research gives us some material targets for what a decent living standard would look like. That is also within planetary boundaries. CO2 emissions would gradually need to drop to zero from about 13 tons per person per year as it is today. Mobility would need to be under 15,000 kilometers per person per year. We would need to keep a cell phone for at least 10 years. The Living Well Within Limits project at University of Leeds shows we can live well at 40% of current energy use despite population growth until 2050. This means to live with 13-18 gigajoules of energy per person per year for a decent standard of living. The real revolution happens with the emancipation of the human spirit away from extraction and towards integration, sharing and sufficiency. In terms of materials needed to sustain the energy transition, research shows that we require the installation of an additional 37,000 terawatts-hour of capacity to sustain the current needs. Humanity has produced 26,000 terawatts-hour in 2018, out of which 17,000 were fossil fuels, coal, gas and oil. All fossil fuels will need to be replaced, and very fast. Under conservative scenarios, the total metal required to produce one generation of technology units far outpaces the global metal production. Sufficiency provides decent living standards distributed fairly. We can also relearn to grow quality food with permaculture locally. We will engage with maintaining biodiversity where we live. We will have more time to enrich our minds and hearts with arts and culture, traveling that does not cause emissions, learning that does not require much energy, and local trade that does not require complicated financial engineering. Degrowth is a philosophy of smart sufficiency that aims to allow humanity to survive well into the far future. Green growth, unfortunately, maintains the status quo of the following: unequal exchange in the north versus south trade relations, massive extraction of assets from the south to benefit consumption in the north, severe inequalities in terms of emissions based on consumption, high environmental footprint that maintains the ecological overshoot, capital accumulation to benefit the ruling class. Degrowth seeks to phase out unequal exchange in international trade, decolonize the global south, empower all local communities to be resilient and self-sufficient, cancel the immoral and unjust foreign debt of the global south, increase the foundation of well-being for all countries within planetary boundaries. The fastest approach to reform the system is, in my opinion, number 1, fast phase out of debt of the global south. Number 2, equalize trade differentials. Number 3, introduce local governance over all natural resources. Number 4, economic democracy. This is how society would benefit from implementing degrowth policies. The vast majority of humans on Earth will see their quality of life increase significantly because their exploitation will end and the quality of social services will increase. Workers will enjoy significantly more free time to explore meaning in life that is not intensive in its ecological footprint. We do not need a personal car each or mega mansions. We will stop working in meaningless bullshit jobs that produce useless things and services just to maintain social status. The quality of food will go up because agriculture will be deindustrialized, then relocalized, and return to agroecological and permaculture practices. Everybody will have a guaranteed job if they want it. Everybody will have a universal basic income regardless of social status. There will be maximum limits on income, wealth, and use of resources and energy. Energy will be 100% renewable, used with moderation, and produced locally. A lot of money will become available for research into technologies that increase well-being, but not capital accumulation. We will get rid of traffic and noise pollution. We will have more time for art and entertainment, as local as possible and accessible as possible. Wars will not be necessary and will become a thing of the past because we will no longer fight over resources or territories. The ruling class will lose the power over capital accumulation. Democracy will get a massive boost because more humans will be able to engage in social life. Cultures will no longer be oppressed by consumerism and will be given space to breathe and flourish. Parking lots will be replaced by parks and gardens. We will have less roads for personal cars and more space for nature to evolve. Degrowth is actually the viable path towards a Star Trek-like society that doesn't need money to explore the galaxy. In conclusion, here are 6 of my favorite items on the degrowth agenda that can help with the transition to a post-capitalist, post-growth economic system. Number 1, economic democracy. The unbridled hegemony of capitalism rests on the power that the owners of capital have over their employees. In the name of fiduciary duty, managers and executives can hire and fire workers at will, exactly like kings in feudalism. We must reform corporate law and allow democracy inside corporations on the principle of one worker, one vote. Decisions about what to produce, how to produce, how much everyone gets paid should be collective, democratic decisions. Energy democracy. Energy should be considered a common good as it is essential for human well-being. Energy cooperatives that are managed democratically can open the space for decolonization and environmental stewardship as it already exists in places around the world. Work time reduction. Innovation and automation have promised us that we will work less and can let robots take over. What happened with that promise? Why do we still work 40 hours in bullshit jobs to produce bullshit things? We could work 15, 20 hours per week to produce just the stuff we really need and use the extra time to enjoy life. Phase out advertising and phase in sufficiency measures. The advertising industry is largely guilty for inventing fake needs just to keep the growth engine working. We can do without advertising. Reallocate excess wealth. Universal basic income, maximum income, and maximum wealth. These measures would create a foundation of safety and justice. At the same time, maximum limits on income and wealth will decrease the purchasing power of the rich and bring society back within planetary boundaries. Nationalize and phase out fossil fuel companies. Nothing to add here. It's very simple. For more juicy stuff, you can check out degrowth.world, degrowth.info, and degrowth.net. And to quote Greta Thunberg, change is coming, whether we like it or not. Click subscribe to become an official member of the revolution. And if you can, please support me through the links below to cover the costs with the production of these videos. They do not come in cheap. It takes a lot of reading, thinking, eating, equipment. I will never collect money from advertising. Until next time, be well and increase the peace.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta